Hello Bookish friends, welcome to my October wrap-up part 2. In this video I will talk about the 6 works that I finished in the second half of October. And like I did in my previous wrap-ups, I will insert the clips that I've recorded very soon after I finish those works. Today is the 16th of October and I finished a very short non-fiction research work. Sherlock, Holmes ve Peder Brown, Rasyonalite ve İnancın Çatışması. The title can be roughly translated as Sherlock Holmes and Father Brown, the conflict between rationality and religion. This research work has 4 sections. In the first section, in the introduction, the author Fulya Turhan talks about how the genre of detective fiction and mystery became very popular in the Victorian times and the social reasons behind it. In the second section, she talks about the creation of both detectives, their characters, and some of their very significant plot devices. In the third section, she compares the detectives and their similarities as well as their contrasts. And like the title suggests, their biggest contrast comes from the way that they perceive religion and the way that they approach the solution of the crime. And in the last section, she finalizes the work with both of the detectives' influences on the subgenre of detective fiction in mystery. This work was a joy to listen for me, being a big fan of mystery and especially detective fiction. A research work analyzing their differences was very interesting for me, and I quite enjoyed the way that the author was thinking. And since both of the authors started writing in the Victorian period, especially the first part of the research was specifically about Victorian period, I think I'm going to consider this work as a victober work. I gave Sherlock Holmes ve Peder Brown, Rasyonalite ve İnancın Çatışması by Fulya Turhan an 8 out of 10. Today is the 22nd of October and I finished one book yesterday and another one today. The book that I finished yesterday was The Mark by Frida Isberg. In this book featuring a dystopic Iceland, the society is divided about the very controversial empathy test, which measures an individual capacity for compassion and identifies antisocial behavior in citizens. The majority of the people have gone through this test and have been labeled as marked. The divide between the marked and unmarked people in the society and their opportunities for living gradually increase, and this last referendum for the empathy test is the pinnacle point of this divide. We follow a time period from I think about 2 months into the day of the referendum from the points of view of characters involved in very different spectrums of this debate. So, one physiologist who was one of the creators of the test, the businesswoman Asia who fails the test, the school dropout Tristan who joins the resistance to have a right not to be tested, and the school teacher Vetur who sort of falls into the middle camp. This book was suggested for my real life book club. I'm very glad that I read this book and discovered this author from Iceland. It took a bit of time to get into the book. Author uses both first names and the surnames of the character alternatively. I thought that there existed much more characters than the actual ones. But once I identified the characters in my mind, the story got much more interesting, and I really loved the ethical dilemmas and the questions that it brought to my mind while reading it. I could see the point of view of all of the characters All of them had a valid argument point. Overall, this was a quite successful read for me, and I gave The Mark by Frida Isberg an 8 out of 10. The second book that I finished was a reread for me, Ordeal by Innocence by Agatha Christie. I reread this book for Emily's Agatha for Alice project. This book was actually on the list. It was quite a long time since I read it. In this book, Rachel Argyle has been murdered about 2 years ago. Adopted son, Jacko, is found guilty for murder, even though he said that he had an alibi. However, when this alibi did not come forward, he was sent to prison and then died there. 2 years later, the alibi, Dr. Calgary, arrives and says that because he had a concussion and then went to an Arctic expedition, he did not know about this trial, thinking that this revelation will be welcomed by the family. Dr. Calgary sees that the family is very, very distressed about this new revelation because it shows that one of them is the actual killer of the matriarch of the family. I'm quite glad that I reread this book. Although I remembered the ending quite clearly, I think rereading an Agatha Christie book can be very fun for me because I can see how cleverly the author created the mystery with very small details. Although there are some red herrings in every story that she writes, the real solution is actually there for us to discover, but we have to, of course, separate it from the other plot threads, which can lead us to red herrings. It was exactly like that, especially in this book. The tempo of the book was very, very good. And although this is one of her later books, the author really shines in her very familiar settings, an English mansion with a bunch of suspects who are either family or very, very close friends. Overall, I really enjoyed this reread. I did not change my rating and gave Ordeal by Innocence by Agatha Christie an 8 out of 10. Today is the 27th of October and I finished one work yesterday evening and one book today. The first book was a play that I read for victober. I chose not to do any of the prompts in victober, but my dear friend Rosa's prompt, which was to read a play. I read a play from my favorite Victorian author, Oscar Wilde, Lady Windermere's fan. In this play, Lady Windmere is a very happily married woman at the beginning of the play. But when one of her elderly lady friends call and say that her husband is very much involved with a elderly woman who's divorced and does not have a good name in society, she suspects that her husband is having an affair with that lady. When her husband denies the allegations, but insist on inviting the other lady to their party, Lady Windmere becomes sure that there is something sinister going on between her husband and this lady. Although it was easy to predict what was happening, I quite liked the plot of the play. It was a very well-structured story, and also the tempo was excellent. But what made this play very, very special for me was the way that Oscar Wilde plays with words. Like I mentioned many times, I think Oscar Wilde is a writing genius. So I gave Lady Windermere's Fan by Oscar Wilde an 8 out of 10. And the book that I finished today was another book that I was reading for victober, which was a buddy read with Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading and her good friend and my new good friend Joe Smith, Uncle Silas by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. We also read this book for the memory of Jennifer Brooks, who sadly passed away at a very young age at the beginning of this year. This book was one of her favorites. In this book, Maud Ruthven lives with her father, and she is an heiress of a very large fortune. But she lives a very secluded and is a quite naive young girl. She has a French governess who's quite mysterious and also a very sinister woman. When she is dismissed, Maud thinks that her worries are over. However, when her father dies, she is sent to live with her uncle Silas, who has been isolated from his family because of a unfortunate marriage, and also has been a person of interest in a murder trial, and has been dismissed because of lack of evidence. Maud at first is quite happy to live with her uncle, befriending her cousin. When her other cousin comes and insistent on marrying Maud, she finds herself more and more in distress. I very much enjoyed this light thriller, and especially at the last quarter of the book. I was very much concerned for Maud and what will happen to her. The mystery was quite interesting, and I also liked the very good use of gaslighting in a thriller. With the exception of a section in the middle, I thought the tempo was quite good for a Victorian book. Characters were quite complex, especially the sinister and evil characters were constructed very, very well. However, unfortunately, the main character Maud was sort of a meh character. She was too bland up until the very last sections of the book. I found the writing style to be quite approachable because not all of the Victorian books are easy for me to read, unfortunately. But what made this reading experience superior was the very, very delightful messages that we sent back and forth between Kelly, Joe, and me. I think I liked the buddy reading experience more than the book. I think the highlight of the month for me so far was this buddy reading experience that I had with Kelly and Joe. Overall, I gave Uncle Silence by J. Sheridan Fanu an 8 out of 10. Today is the 29th of October, and I finished the audiobook that I was listening for Fear of Missing Out Book Club, Horrorstör by Grady Hendrix. In this book, we follow Amy, who's an employer in Ork's Furniture Superstore in Cleveland. This store is a knockoff of IKEA. She is dissatisfied with her work and really dislikes her manager, Basil. One day, Basil asks her and another employer, Ruth Ann, to investigate the strange happenings at night time in the store. She accepts it because then her transfer to another Ork's furniture store will be approved. And during this time, she encounters two young employees who are claiming there are supernatural things happening in the store, and they are trying to make a documentary about it. I have heard quite good things about this book and its dark humor from friends. However, to be honest, not being a fan of slasher movies at all, I knew that this book would not impress me very, very much, and that's what happened. This book had its moments for me, and I really liked the ending of the book. It was written quite well. Also, it played a bit with the cliches of the genre and the twist on a haunted house, on a store which sells house furniture was, I think, the most clever plot point of the book. I think the lovers of horror genre and especially slasher movies would really love this book. This was a decent enough book for me. So I gave Horrorstör by Grady Hendrix a 7 out of 10. Those were the 6 works that I finished in the second half of October. Please comment down below. Have you read any of the works that I mentioned in this video? And what did you think of them? If you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, I'm going to choose store. Store means dükkan in Turkish, and dükkan is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.